Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices, and you can sign up for product alerts. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. It's the end of the year, so I'm doing my best games of different categories. This one today is going to be my favorite strategy games of the year. Without further ado, let's get started.
Number 7.
First one is a game called Meadow. Now this one is sort of in between a family game and a strategy game, but has just a little bit more going on than say, I would teach to players that haven't played games before, modern games. So Meadow is here for the strategy. This is an absolutely gorgeous game. A beautiful artwork, thematic play. You're basically you're gathering these cards and you're placing them in your tableau and you're building up different areas and you're trying to basically, from a mechanical standpoint, place cards on top of other cards that share icons. But thematically, it's like, oh, the caterpillar turns into a butterfly, and the butterfly gets eaten by this, and that gets eaten by that. And you're kind of like playing this, and you're trying to get more and more because you'll be scoring more and more points as you play more cards. But they need different landscapes to be able to go onto. You could also go out further to different areas of the game and build different cards there. But it's driven by an interesting action selection mechanism back in a game called Quadropolis, where you place an arrow with a number and you look down that row or column that number, like 1, 2, 3, or 4, and you're counting over and you're getting that card and then it's replacing. So it has a really interesting action selection mechanism where you're trying to figure out which card you want to get now and when and why and how. But there's also other things that you can do with those actions. Go over to the campfire and try to get bonuses and do this and that. Sometimes you're doing things, going over there to play cards and things, but mechanically, it's relatively simple, but there's a decent amount still going on to think about long-term planning here. This is just a really fun game. It's beautiful. That's Meadow.
Number 6.
This next one is called Destinies. Now, this came out by Lucky Duck Games, who is by far and away one of those smaller publishers that has grown so far over the last few years, and they're really good at integrating app-based play with gameplay, and they've done it beautifully with this. Where Destinies, it's a 1 to 3 player game, where there's multiple stories in each game, multiple games, and in each of those you're going to be a character, and that character is going to have a secret destiny that you're trying to fulfill. You actually have 2 options. And you're going to be going through and you're going to be walking around and having different encounters and trying to do different things and doing some skill checks. But the game itself, the app itself is great because it immerses you in the game. It's telling you a story as you're going through and you're trying to figure out certain things that have to do with your destiny. But with these skill checks, it's also a very innovative way to see if you've got certain things, because you're going to get better and better at certain things over the course of the game, and you're going to be able to roll a certain amount of dice, and a certain amount of dice have to be over a certain number in order to do a different skill check. But as you're upgrading things, it's a very interesting choice of like, ooh, do I want to make it really easy to get a lot of things for this one, or do I want to be able to have, on this other type of skill check, should I do something where I have, more things to roll, but maybe I need something higher to get there. It's so interesting. It's a very innovative system that I'd like to see used in other games. The game itself is it's very fun. You're trying to figure out your destiny. You're trying to be the first one to get there. You're trying to get to the end and do the sort of finale. And each of the scenarios are a little bit different. There's also an expansion called Sea of Sands. This is just a unique game that's a lot of fun, very immersive. Destinies.
Number 5.
This next one is from master designer Eric Lang. This is called Ankh, Gods of Egypt. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. In Ankh, Gods of Egypt, you'll be one of the ancient Egyptian gods like Anubis. And you'll be recruiting your very own warriors and guardians to win battles out in the land. You'll also be trying to build and control monuments like pyramids, temples, and obelisks. And all that will get you devotion, which might get you an immediate win if you get high enough. But you have to be careful, because if you're low enough, you might get left behind and eliminated 3/4 of the way through the game. Or you might end up merging with the other lowest god, working together to defeat the one in the lead. And to do so, you'll have to play battle cards intelligently and planning for the future as well. Controlling those monuments will gain you followers that you'll be able to spend to unlock cool Ankh powers, and don't forget about all the cool special abilities that all the gods have. So let's see if you can pick the right actions at the right time to trigger events
that you'll end up battling for the most devotion.
Yeah, this is one of those big, many people, this is their most anticipated game of the year. This is the third of the trilogy from Blood Rage, then the Rising Sun, and now Ankh. And this is one of those sort of, as you imagine, one of those big area control sort of games where there's some combat involved. The thing that really sets this off from the others is the action selection mechanism, because in this you're trying to take certain actions, but you've got to go top to bottom, and also you don't want to set someone else up, because when someone takes the last action of a specific type, then they're basically getting some bonuses and things and being able to push the game forward and getting some benefits. And it's interesting because it's like, oh, I want to take this action, but then I'm going to be setting this person up. And so you might be like, oh, next turn I'm going to be taking this action. But then someone set you up and you're like, that action's not the best thing for me to do right now, but I'm going to be able to do this to trigger this, and then I'm going to be able to put some camels out and separate out different areas, and it's just so clever. It's pretty streamlined for how deep and how heavy the game is, but it's still a very streamlined mechanism. This is sort of like those, if you like those big, sprawling, grandiose games that take, 2 hours or more, and that has some area control, has some really cool minis, but yet is still streamlined from the mechanisms, check this one out.
Number 4.
The next one is called Maglev Metro. This is from Bezier Games. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works.
Maglev Metro is an innovative pick up and deliver engine building, tile laying game for 1 to 4 players. You'll be utilizing state-of-the-art magnetic levitation technology to build a metropolitan rail system transporting commuters and robots beneath the city. You'll be placing tiles of your own track's color, connecting existing stations with future stations that you'll also be building. These stations are destinations that specific passengers want to be dropped off at, so you'll be picking up passengers and transporting them to their desired location. For example, the steel builder robots want to be dropped off at the factory, which also matches its color. The more robots you drop off, the more efficient engine you'll build as you choose where to place them, increasing your effectiveness of building tracks, moving your train, picking up or dropping off passengers, and more. The delivered robots not only help you build your engine, they also help you unlock the ability to build stations for commuter passengers and deliver them, like the pink professionals being delivered to the office. But watch out, because your opponents are racing to deliver them first, so efficiency is key. Dropping off the 4 commuter types is one of the main ways to gain points in the game. You'll also be trying to fulfill private goals like gaining extra points for each delivered purple artisan commuter, or building direct connections between 2 specific station types. You'll also be gaining points for each linked pair of stations with your tracks. Build the most efficient transport to be the hero of a new century.
Yeah, this is such a cool sort of engine building, pick up and deliver game that has some really unique twists to it. The biggest twist to this game, well, the trains themselves, those big heavy metal trains, are awesome. The way that when you lay those tiles, they're like clear and see-through, so that multiple players can have all their you can have a tile in the same spot, so you can always see where players' trains can go and where their track is. That's a really cool design choice here. Also, the coolest thing is that in most engine building games, you build up an engine and then you just run it. And in this game, you're building up an engine, but at some point you're going to need to pivot because of the strategies of the game change sort of as the game goes on. And you're like, oh, I'm really built up well for this. And you're like, well, you can adjust your engine. You can take an action to adjust it. It's like, now I don't do this as well, but now I do this even better than I used to, because now in this section of the game, I'm going to be kind of like doing more of this. And it's really interesting that you can be doing that and adjusting your engine. It's really what made this game set itself apart from other engine builders and pick up delivery games, Maglev Metro.
Number 3.
This one is called Iberian Gauge, and this is brought to us by Capstone Games. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this one works.
Iberian Gauge is a train game for 3 to 5 players where you're trying to have the most money at the end by investing and influencing different rail companies. And over the course of the game, you're trying to buy stocks in those and then raise their values by influencing them. But as players invest, they actually go into a treasury that this company will use in order to build throughout the game. But it's the players who determine what and where they build using the money of the company. Like working together to get to a big city, making your dividends go up and the stock value. And dividends is cash now because you're going to be making dividends for each of the shares that you own. For example, the purple, pink, and green players are going to earn shares. Purple's actually going to get 2 of them for $14. But you have to be careful because if someone gets too powerful, the other share owners might just waste their money building into expensive spots to dwindle the funds. And with clever play, you can set yourself up to have other companies lease from you, giving you money when you need it the most. So in this case, yellow would pay right to the purple company, which is a great way to raise funds for the company because they'll run out eventually. And after a series of investing and building rounds, whoever has the most monies with all their shares and money in hand is the winner.
Yeah, last week I came out with a best reprints of the year because Board Game Geek has this listed as a 2017 release, and typically I don't put a game on more than one list. That's just sort of what I do at the end of the year. But I talked to the publisher after I made that video and he saw it up there. And we discussed it and he said, oh yeah, it was technically released in 2017, but it was a tiny release. There was only like 100 copies. And this is really like the first real release. And because of that, I'm allowing it to be on this list, even though I put it on another list because it's not really a reprint, I guess. Now this game is just so clever because you're building these trains and train routes and you're running these companies. You're gonna own stock in certain companies with other players. And the cool thing is that you don't want to own too much because if you do, each player that has stock gets to move that train and they might totally hose you. Like if you own 3 stock in that, the players are going to use their turns to drive that train into the ground because you're going to be making 3 times as much as them. So you're trying to evenly split yourself up with other players, not get too much of a majority on things. You're also trying to like lease tracks from some of your other companies that you own in to try to filter money in through that way. You're also trying to figure out, the best way to synergize with other players without totally screwing them over. It's an economic game. You're trying to you use the treasury to take the actions, but yet you have money too to buy other stock. It's just such an interesting twist on train games, and the player interaction is huge. Fantastic game that will bring lots of memorable moments. Iberian Gauge.
Number 2.
This one is Free Ride, and that is designed by Freedom and Freeze. And this is came out at the end of the year here, in Europe, and then here in North America, Rio Grande Games are bringing it early next year. This is a game that sort of is inspired, or is a spiritual successor to say A Ticket to Ride and Transamerica, where you're building these train routes. But the game itself has such streamlined mechanism. You can either build track, which is yours, you own that track, or you can move your train. And at sometimes you're going to have to get more track. But when you're doing this, you're building these things up and you're trying to get your way to certain trains. You've got to move your train to a start spot of a route in Europe, and then you've got to bring your train to where that ends. But there's lots of choices into which ones you can start or end at because there's 6 different possible columns, meaning 12 different routes that you can really try to get. And over the course of the game, you're going to be able to hold more routes and do more things. And then towards the really end of the game, you can move even faster. But the clever thing here is that this mechanism is just so simple. But if you use somebody else's route, you're going to pay them a coin, which essentially is 3 points, which is a lot in this game. So the whole game is an efficiency thing. It's like, do I want to go through this opponent's thing? It'll probably save me 2 turns, but I'm going to be basically giving them 3 points to do that. And you're constantly weighing, is this action worth this many points? And it's really clever because it's like, if you like those train style games, this is fantastic because it's so easy and so streamlined, but the decisions are excruciating. Freedom and Freeze did a great thing here with Free Ride.
Number 1.
All right, we are at Strategy Game of the Year. Here we have Witchstone. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works.
Witchstone is a strategy game for 2 to 4 players where each player will have their own cauldron and they'll be placing hex tiles to do actions and different powers of them depending on how many of the same symbol you can link together. Now in the big cauldron on the board, you're going to be building networks of energy which are going to score you points as you complete them, but also allowing you to bring witches in and moving them around and putting them in different locations, gaining you different actions and endgame points. But you're also doing that to try to fulfill prophecies and endgame goal cards, like having your witches in certain locations, or having networks to certain locations, or even the amount of witches on the board, getting you a certain amount of points. More and more, the better you do that prophecy. You might also be using wand actions to fly down a track and getting actions and even better versions of them if you're the first one there. Or moving around the pentagram, not only gaining actions that you can use one time for good power, or using them on your board for multiple uses, or getting the best points as you pass different spots. And whoever does the best job puzzling out their cauldron, getting the prophecies and fulfilling those and getting points throughout the game for the end game goals is gonna be the winner.
Yeah, this game is just fantastic in so many ways that I love that Reiner Knizia used his mechanism of selecting actions the same way that you play the tiles in Ingenious, one of his older titles that should have won the Spiel des Jahres, but I think it went up against Ticket to Ride that year. And you're comboing those actions as the more things of that you can put next to each other, the stronger that action is. And each of those actions do totally different things. This is like a point salad that feels like a Stefan Feld game, even though it's a co-designed by Reiner Knizia. And you're trying to combo together these things so you're getting this and then getting that and then getting this. So I get points for this, I get points for that, I get points for this. It's so clever, but driven by that ingenious mechanism is awesome. And you're going off and you're building a network of energy that you're going to be using to bring your witches on the board to go get certain things. And you're setting yourself up to move faster on the board because there's some end game goals that will be getting you things. Or you're getting points for even just finishing those goals. But you can go to the pentagram and get a bunch of extra actions and possibly points. You can race down the wand track and get points. So many things to do here. Tons of, it's just so great. Moving those gems out of the way. This game feels different every time you play it. And there's a decent amount of player interaction where you're trying to race to certain things, plus get to the board certain things. It plays well with two. You can play this game in with two players in 45 minutes. It is a lot of game for 45 minutes. And then of course it can go up to possibly 90 minutes if you're playing with 4 players. But for this game is just great. It's a medium weight Euro. It has a lot going on, but it's very, very good. Witchstone. All right, well there you have my best strategy games of the year. Now if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that because next week I'm going to be coming out with the best games of all categories, the single best, many categories I haven't even talked about yet this week. If you're new to the channel, look at my previous videos. I just went and did a lot of different best of for different categories where there's multiple games for each category. And next week I'm also going to be doing my top 10 of the year. This is the most exciting part of the year. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you'll love.
Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table to a high-quality gaming solution, they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with their amazing, thematic, premium stitch edge mats from noted board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and really cool accessories, it's a complete system that upgrades every game you play. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.